YouTube family. It's your girl Kim, the Princess of Transparency. So come on in, and before I get started on this topic, please click the subscribe, share, and like button. So today's topic is a very serious one and it's near and dear to my heart. So today we're talking about grief, and ooh, I'm out here in nature trying to trying to make this video, but I swear, um, it's about grief and taking the mask off. Um, Over the last 2 months, I've been dealing with the grief of my dad's death on February 2nd, 2019. My dad passed. It was expected, but kind of suddenly. He was in hospice for not even a whole 2 months before he passed from renal disease caused by hypertension and diabetes. But throughout his whole entire process of going through transitioning, which I've done other videos on, it just became, it started taking its mental toll on me that I went through all the stages of grief. They say there's 5 stages of grief. I went through the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and acceptance, but mine were kind of like all over the place. But during the whole entire process of what I was going through, I had a mask on. I wouldn't allow myself to fully feel and go through everything I was going through because being who I was and being who I am, um, I made sure that everybody else was taken care of except for myself. That I made sure that all the I's were dotted, T's were crossed, arrangements were made, and if my mother couldn't handle it or take care of it mentally or physically, I was that person that was the go-to. Um, but it doesn't even just start with my dad's services. It goes way back, from the time I was 5 years old, that I became so wrapped up in making sure that everybody else was okay and just being depressed all the time, feeling sad all the time. And people just didn't understand that. People didn't understand why I always isolated myself, why I always just made sure that everybody else had what they needed, because it gave me a sense of pride and peace. But internally, since the age of 5, I felt like I was dying. And even at the age of 8, I can recall feeling so wrapped up in my emotions and just the hurt that at 8 years old, I attempted suicide. And I even still have the scars to this day because life just got to be so bad that I just learned to put that mask on and just didn't deal and didn't feel. And it just became a part of who I was. It became um, a sense of my reality. And I learned to make it acceptable. And within the last 2 months, really, with my dad's death, everything just pretty much came to a head. That the mask started cracking. That I really started feeling like I just could not deal. I couldn't I couldn't take it anymore. Um, I guess you could say the final straw recently, with my dad's passing, we had some mementos or fingerprints done for him so that we could make it into mementos. And it just got to a point that my mom, everybody's grieving stage is different. She she kind of wanted things to be out of sight, out of mind, and rearranged a whole lot of stuff, and ended up misplacing and losing the fingerprints. And needless to say, um, I just snapped. That it just took its toll. That I couldn't manage. What most people don't realize is with the mask on, and to some or outsiders, they think that because me and my dad had a relationship in the last 4 years, that everything between me and him were perfect. Far from the truth. It took for my dad to get seriously ill for me to even have a relationship with him, for me to even know that my dad loved me or even liked me, because we had such a brutal relationship that we couldn't see eye to eye at all. So the one thing that I never did with the mask on was to ask for help because I was always so criticized. So I just was a self-sufficient person. I just made sure that my pain was covered, that mask was always on, that people didn't know that I would cry myself to sleep. That even at the age of 13, because the mask became so everyday for me and so natural, that I would even at the age of 13 go into self-mutilation because I just couldn't deal. I would literally sit there and cut my wrist or cut my thighs just to deal with the pain of what I was going through. So that mask, it was real. And when you couple it off with grief, it just makes it 10 times worse. But when fingerprints got lost or misplaced, it just sent me into a complete shockwave of how do I manage that now I have to take this mask off. Now I have to ask for help. How do I really break myself down? And when I did, I felt like it was the hugest mistake of my life because everybody became so critical of me feeling the way I felt. And like I said, the grief process is different for everybody. I went from one stage to another, back to another, from stage 1 to stage 5, down to 3, and it just went all over the place. So, needless to say, it became an ugly situation when I'm asking people for help, and people, felt like they could just be so judgmental of who I was and what I was going through at that time period. And I felt like I just couldn't do it, didn't want to do it again. So, when I got to that point, sorry, I got bugs going around me. When I got to that point of just going through asking for help and people feeling so critical of feeling like they could just tell it like it is or tell me how they felt about my situation, it took its toll on me to the point that I almost contemplated going back into the self-mutilation, back into the suicidal thoughts and depression. That it got real bad. So this video is more so just to alert people that when you think that you're criticizing somebody or you're correcting somebody on how they feel or what they're going through, don't make your ego bigger than your advice. That just because you think that you're telling somebody how it is or how you think it should be, you don't know that you could drive them to something that they are trying their best to be delivered from. That old saying that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me is such a lie. Words can be one of the crucial things that can drive somebody into something that they can't come back from. That there were so many times I would tell people that you can't do something permanent off a temporary situation, but you never know what somebody has had to go through in their life, especially early on, that was not just temporary. That seemed like it was a sense of permanency for them. So I say all this to say, be careful with your words. If you want to help somebody take the mask off, do it in a positive manner. Don't kill somebody's spirit because you feel as though your ego is bigger than the advice that you claim that you want to give. That you can't be godly and be ugly at the same time. You got to really be accepting of where it is that you want to be in your own life and get yourself right before you try to get somebody else right. So I say all this in closing. Just be careful about your words. Be intentional and not harmful. So there's always somebody else out here who's hurting worse than you are. You never know what's behind the mask, and you never know why the mask is there. So peace and blessings.